Hiya. It's 9 o'clock on Thursday, 28th of May. And this is the third reading of the day for me and my poems. If you've not seen me before, then I've been reading poems most of the days of this lockdown, a few days off here and there, choosing a set of a few poems, anything from 1 to half a dozen or more, and reciting them 3 times a day over that day. It's been keeping me going over this lockdown. I think it's been a benefit to some people, and I'm pleased with that. It's a small audience. I'm pleased. I'm happy with that too. That's been nice. Regular faces, regular names. Can't help but feel a little bit self-conscious when you know you're doing the same poems as you did earlier on. But if you come back, then you were warned. Just been reading a piece talking about poetry as not being a performance art. And I couldn't help feeling that for me, it is so bound up with performance. And when I say it's so bound up with that, it seemed a very strange conclusion. I can understand where people are coming from. It's been sat on the page for so very long. I wonder what would happen if somebody actually performed Keats rather than just reading it. What it'd be like. And because when I speak of performance, that in itself has got a ton of associations with it. I came back to poetry writing for ritual, for, would you believe, religious ritual, pagan ritual, rites of passage, celebrations of a season, of a marriage, of a death even. He was writing almost for a congregation of people to express the search for spiritual meaning and values. And so it wasn't about, look at me performing my piece, listen to my clever words. It was very much about, do these words capture your feeling? Do these words capture your aspiration? Do you trust me enough to lead you to meet the gods, essentially, to meet the goddesses, to have them in your life, to feel your own aliveness? And so there was something about that. And I always felt, ignore the words even. It's not about the poet or the poem. It's about whatever breath, heart and love is going through that poem to make us want to be alive, to acknowledge how much alive we are. So poetry on a page always felt like a very alien thing to me. I could acknowledge doing these pagan rituals how theatrical they were, how very like being on a stage and inviting the spirits of the audience to almost like land on you and to be moved by the way you walk, the way you act, the way you speak. And I could feel that also as I don't want to call it a priest, a godman is one of the terms we would use, a godi. And you could sort of feel it. And so I feel that also when I do poetry, and I'm not saying that this is a religious service or anything, but it is hankering after something more. So when I see poem on a page or people reading from a page, and it is people reading, it's not people putting a poem across, I do find it leaving me thirsty for more of something else. Anyway, I've only really been talking here whilst I've given people a few minutes to log on and join me, so ignore all that bit if you want. It's just me waffling. But it was kind of to the point because the poems that I'm reading today are all about poems on the air. I did a previous set about the writing and creating the poetry, but this one is very much about what is coming through, the experience of speaking poetry on a stage, the joy of hearing poetry, the joy of speaking poetry. And for me, it's never enough just to write it down. I need to speak it. And so that the fact that you've come and wanted to listen is a great, joyful heart to me. Let me do you some poems. I've got a couple to do amongst these that are very much of that page, words on the page, words in the air. But this introductory one, this first one, The Quiet Voice, touching on a little bit on what's underneath that, perhaps. And he's wondering now, after so many years, if that quiet voice is ever heard. And he thinks it only happy when it's silenced, but does not understand who might be speaking, who is calling with excruciate clamour, like a skin yearning to be touched, but not as loud. Like a scream breathing in, he knows it to be speaking underneath his every word. I'll leave that thought there while I go to this one. It's that sense of what's underneath for all of us in our hearts and our minds, so blithely and easily dismissed and covered over by our surface interactions. It's kind of hard to know where poetry fits in with that, except at a funeral, everybody knows the purpose of poetry there. And also at a wedding, people will understand there is something in the air, something in the communal that needs to be vocalized. And so we've got a whole list of funeral poems to do just that job. I've played with that a little bit on this one, with the thought of the poem Funeral. This poem was loud. This poem had breath. This poem had drive and a heart underneath. It had a crowd to take it in. But now we lay it down upon a thin page. This poem once was a song for the mourners, was a bed for the lovers, had the cry of the newly born, wah, 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 ringing in the new mother's ear. Was the young's first word, was the earnings of the wise, was a champion against the fear and for the most absurd of yearnings. This poem was a skimming stone bouncing on the water of so many. This poem was the voice of the unheard. Now we lay it down to rest upon the page, flat. This poem moved, this poem spoke, this poem loved, this poem poked, this poem filled the room, this poem paused. This poem willed the gloomy bright into applause. This poem had a heart, had breath, had warmth, had the silent air thrown into a cyclone. And now we lay it down upon a white sheet, upon a page, buried in a book with its own title stone. This poem is loud. This poem has breath. This poem has drive and a heart beating underneath. It has a crowd to take it in. And now we lift it up from a thin page. There's something more, far more than the poem and the poet and the audience. There's something unspoken, an interaction, a sharing, an acknowledgement of our depth and our sheer magnificence, each of us. And it's a shame that the almost like relegated to being on a stage when it's not allowed in a one-to-one conversation of, oh, now you're speaking. Anyway, and also part of the value of watching a young performer finding their feet on a stage, stepping onto it, heart going, veins running, arms shaking, mouth dry, stepping into this hurricane of people's attention. I often do feel it as a storm of psyches flying around, and if I get it right, then they'll settle upon me and let me move them and direct them, and they'll sort of be leaning on and knowing that they're held, have all sorts of thoughts and associations. Anyway, in the time it takes to learn that, and you're watching people reading maybe even not very good poems, it doesn't really matter, because they're coming into their own, they're finding themselves. You can see it. You can see it as they step onto the stage, often out of the crowd, out of the audience, as themselves, not with the luxury of wings or curtains or costumes. So having said all that, I'm going to take us away to the open water. Sometimes the waves broke over her, but when she could regain the surface, she opened her mouth, and what came out gave her buoyancy. The extra breath, perhaps, and more that lifting hand of the sea. Sometimes she could barely hear the melody, as legs cramped and shoulders ached and water lodged crabby in her ear. But a shell, she caught the ocean's rhapsody and bound it to the words she found inside, bringing this, intermittent as the tide. I am not drowning, I am singing. Art. A shy thing, my art, stood on stage, with the audience gaze weighing in. But my art's brave, means what it says, stays on, however hard it's beating. That's my art for you. I'm talking about the difference in feeling between words on a page, words in the air. And it's more, I am talking about more than poetry. I think you know that. Words on a page doing what? I don't know, it's almost like directed life, the life you've been told to live, the surface life, the thin, superficial life we're so often tempted into following, versus being words on the air, being breath, being blood and heart. I called this one Words, although you do need to see, this is a written thing, you need to see it written down, it's W-I-R-D-S, and you'll know why in a bit. They're sitting here all, these words, like owls in a parliament, heavily debating, like pigeons preening, fancying themselves, poems cooped up when they should be racing. Don't you think it an unkindness to leave them trapped in a book tower, unflighted ravens? Shake 'em up. Shake 'em out, make a murmuration, make a clamour, make a mischief, make an exultation. Make them sparrows in a quarrel, Make them parrots and a prattle in a pandemonium. Throw them in a boomerang, set them all a chattering. Let them charm like the hummingbirds, scold like the jays, bursting from their cot in a cry of doves. This is what it sounds like, having their say. So many crows in a storytelling there, make 'em bullfinches bellowing, make a God whip prayer. Out of the aviary, out of the cage, up, up, breath flying, these new-fledged first words spoken, speaking, off from the page. Give 'em enough space. Chuffed in your care, larking on the rise, swift in the air, kite in the skies, warblers and nightingales picking up the melodies, rhymes in the turns, flying on the frenadies, going with the flow, blocks of words becoming flocks of words. The morning chorus reawoken. Check this out. Eggshells broken. An early one getting a bite, a blackbird singing in the dead of night, a golden eagle taking her first flight. Sailing, soaring, words up high, spitting atoms, slam, spouting, speaking easy, spoken. I'm a very quiet person in normal life. You know, when I was a kid, I would go wandering around, not saying a word for days on end. So shy was I to, I don't know, to speak, I suppose, finding a voice. But then when I studied mime, that was never enough. I thought, no, I've got to speak as well. I can't just do silent things. Strange. But that does need to be heard. It does need you to fall onto. So I hope you don't mind. Stepping away from that a little bit, the very thought of speaking something, it was always a magic thing, speech, spell. Its original meaning was to speak, to spell things out. The power of reaching in deep into your lungs, pushing it out again. All so many muscles involved in this. The vibration of your chest, on your nose, all over your face, on your passing through the vocal cords, your blood exploding with the breath taken. So to speak is a magic act. And it might be worth considering that next time you spend time speaking. Not necessarily in an audience, to someone else, or in this case, even just to yourself. And she said, "You cannot speak it here. There is no room for such." Then where? They took it to the void. The earth fell away at their toes. The sky asked for air. It was spoken, falling out of the mouth like unspooled threads with no one to hear. And they turned, one on the other's shoulder, weak from the expelling, grateful for the care, feeling that the void now resided in the spaces by the heart, while somewhere near, unseen, in assumed emptiness, with the words all spoken, a new world there. So I'm thinking also of that, the difference in experience when you speak, call it small talk, or when you speak from your very deepest self, how it feels, the difference. It gets easier to do if you're doing it with poetry. It's all written out there ready for you to re-inhabit. More difficult to do without, but it's worth the practice. And it's a shame there isn't a space for it outside of the performance space, where someone can just speak their heart and you know they're telling nothing but truth. So speak now and forever hold your peace. Wouldn't it be nice to be in a living poem? No need to write it down, but just to listen to the rhymes and the silences, the sounds, and the rhythms swaying first to you and then to me, and every word a resonance of beauty. When a jar tries to catch us, we can laugh, we can break, syncopate, we can take the line to each and every level, circulate a smile into every heartbroken cry, into every crinkled lip and chin like a simile. And sometimes we could pose in prose, work in time, production line, dress our naked tongues in safety clothes, nude beneath our dungarees, twinkle toes in our solid boots, beating 1 and 2 and 3, and watch the meter. But mostly we could breathe each new reprise, spit out meanings that the world never thought to see, touch alliterations like the lonely lover lightly set in lace, looking onward to the coming of their lost beloved, sunrise in their face. Every flower's bloom would have its dark root, every drowning wave would have a bright moon, bringing all the deep forlorn again to shore. Every spouted word would be released, sounded, heard, be resisted, be embraced hand in hand with every word that went before. In time, we would no longer know who the poet was, who was speaking, who was hearing, who was being moved. But everything of me would be said, and everything of you, and everything of the world, everything in time. Taken, spoken, loved, wouldn't it be nice? Yes, isn't it? Those are my poems for today. Touching on the spoken word. It does have a particular meaning in poetry circles, as almost like a type of poetry, but as an act, the heightened language. In the sagas, there's any number of instances where a great warrior is seen in the midst of battle to suddenly go into verse and declaim something memorable in poetic form. And in musicals, to connect something quite odd, it's been said that for the characters, it's not enough for them to speak normally. They have to break into song to describe the sense of who they are and what they are, the size of their emotion. And there's something on that in the spoken word. To take the breath, put your meaning on it, fly it out into the world. That's me for today. Thank you very, very much for joining in and listening and allowing me to speak. The video for this will be on the timeline shortly after, and I shall be back probably Saturday to read some more at 3 o'clock, 5:30 and 9, if you're around, nothing else to do. In the meantime, in these strange times, as the lockdown begins to weaken for good or ill, I hope you keep well and safe, looking after those you care about and looked after by them. Keep well.